Welcome back, everybody, to Season 5, Week 6 of the Eternal Tournament Series. We are coming at you with the semifinals for this week. We have an exciting matchup here in Praxis Midrange versus Big Combre. We have Paradox on Praxis Midrange and Moosh on Big Combre. I am Calimdir, also known as Gabe, and I'm joined by my co-caster, LocoPojo.
Yeah, we got a really good matchup for you guys today. We're going to be seeing this pretty sweet deck that I think we've seen both of these decks already once before today, and they've both been doing really well. A lot of big late game stuff happening, a lot of Sandstorm Titans, a lot of Mystic Ascendants, and we're going to be seeing just another knockdown, drag-out fight to see who can win on advantage in the late game or push through for early damage in the first couple of turns. Like, if you can actually get the beatdown going, then that's certainly going to be to your advantage, but we will see exactly who ends up on top in this matchup.
Yeah, all these players in the top 4 have done very well. We see 3 out of 4 of the decks in the top 8 are big time-based mid-range decks, and we've seen a ton of that today, and we're going to see more, I'm sure.
Yep, it's looking pretty exciting. I think there's going to be a lot of value plays being... I think that of these two, I'm inclined to favor Paradox's Praxis midrange in this particular list, just because those Heart of the Vaults can often pressure the game out very, very quickly, and with the Obliterates for the Seraphs, there's going to be a decent amount of options for Paradox to shut down Big Combre early. But if Ironthorn Ascendant or Seraph gets off and actually gets to set up correctly for the board, then that's going to be a really big deal as well.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. I feel like if Moosh is in a position where they have to play a lot of harsh rules and try and clear the board, Paradox's deck can easily, warp in a couple, have some Dawnwalkers come back, warp in some Shatterglass Mages, warp in a Heart of the Vault, and come right back and have Moosh just be completely out of gas. But if they're just playing units on the board and Paradox doesn't, displace their tempo, Moosh out of the game or get in the bigger threats, they're going to play a lot of units that bounce off each other, and Mystic Ascendant, Martial Ironthorn, Seraph are just way more valuable than anything Paradox is going to do. So it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be a tough round. We'll certainly see who comes out on top. Right now, looking at the opening hands, it looks like Paradox has access to a Praxis banner and a seat, along with a Seek power to get the third power that is what he's looking for. With Initiate into Friendly Wisp into some sort of possible big unit, there's some pretty good value value and tempo in Paradox's hand. This looks like a pretty solid keeper.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little slower than I want it to be, but you can't throw away a hand that has Turn to Initiate and then an Undepleted Banner and a Seek power into... Praxis Displacer is actually not a card I want to see in my opener. I want to draw that off the top of my deck in the late game. But I still think Friendly Wisp and Initiative Sands is good enough, like you said.
Yeah, it's looking pretty solid. I think that overall there's going to be a decent amount of back and forth between the two players. Moosh keeps the hand with the 2 Desert Marshals.
And Paradox sends that one back, so we were just entirely wrong.
Yeah, gotta be looking for an answer to a lot of the early threats, perhaps trying to shut down the Dawnwalkers. Having an answer to the Dawnwalkers is certainly important to Moosh, so I can see why he'd keep that hand. And also, this is the early game setup that you really want to sort of make sure that you can maintain some pressure if that can happen.
Moosh going with the classic strategy of, if I have all the power in my opening hand, I can't draw it later.
I like that strategy quite a bit. I'm generally fond of just making sure that you have a consistent power drop all the way up to 7 in these types of decks, just because Mystic Ascendant and Heart of the Vault are such important cards in the list. Like, if you are playing against another slow deck, it's really important to make sure that you're actually hitting your power every single turn. And so hopefully we'll see some significant value out of the two.
Yeah, and Paradox drew into a much better hand. He had an already good hand, went turn 1 Initiate into turn 2 Amber Acolyte, fixing his power. Now, though, needs a 4th power to be able to actually play the Sandstorm Titan next turn.
Kind of a rough day. We've got the double torches. We have Sandstorm Titan coming up, but Paradox is actually potentially short on his 4th power. which means that he might end up being stuck for a little while, just throwing torches and hoping to get to the next card in his list. He finds the seat. That means he's not going to play Sandstorm Titan on time, but he is going to have all of the necessary influence to play Heart of the Vault and to play Sandstorm Titan next turn.
Yeah, absolutely. And Musha's strategy of having all the power and making all the land drops kind of paying off here, because now they're live to so many cards off the top of their deck.
And we see Paradox throwing double torch here just to make sure that he is the one who is playing on the aggressive side. By getting a Sandstorm Titan down first, Paradox can use his own burn spells to start pushing through for damage and just maintain that board position as long as possible. If you can maintain it for 5 turns on a Sandstorm Titan, that's enough to win the game, and Paradox only has one big card to influence that board at the moment, but at the same time, Moosh is not generating anything bigger than a Sandstorm Titan for the next couple of turns.
Yeah, I wonder if that double torch was really the right play. I mean, turns out Moosh just didn't have anything to play, but there are a couple of options, like maybe here, the other Sandstorm Titan bounce off each other, and then you use one torch, and sure, you don't get in 5 damage, but you end up with more value, and you keep a torch for potentially face. But Paradox is going to be pretty happy sitting with his opponent at 15 and an Obliterate and a Flame Blast in his hand.
Yeah, this looks very, very good for Paradox. He's got a 2-turn clock. Moosh cannot play a card, any single card that's going to stop this board from winning. I think Double Torch was absolutely correct in this instance. He's got just 2 turns to win, and I think it's up to Moosh to find a way out of this situation, because Mystic Ascendant isn't going to do it, and neither is a Great Parliament.
I think he might be forced to Great Parliament and double block with the Desert Marshal, which is not where you want to be. Sandstorm Titan actually going to take both of those cards out. But we'll see what Moosh elects to do. And now, oh man, I think the game's just over with this second Obliterate being drawn.
Yeah, Paradox can Obliterate here. He'll get 3 damage in. If the Desert Marshal does in fact come down, okay, the double block is actually bad for him here. We're going to see a trade 2 for 1, and that puts Paradox potentially in a situation where he could fall behind. With the Obliterates, he's still very likely to win the game on just the sheer burn value alone.
Yeah,
that's 5 damage to face. It's looking pretty solid, but it's going to be... it doesn't look like Moosh has a way to gain life, so that's the game.
There's no main deck Protect in Moosh's list, and he can't play a Healer Lady Draws off the top, so that's just it.
Be game. Paradox will be able to take it, and looks like it'll be pretty well set up for him.
Yeah, so that's 1-0, a quick 1-0 for Paradox. And Moosh, interestingly, he played a number of practice mid-range decks in Swiss to get here. It's not a deck that is soft to practice. We know a lot of the field is practice. It's been doing well every week, or the last 2 weeks. So people are expecting it, and so Moosh is not unprepared. So it's interesting to see how strongly how soundly Paradox defeated him in that game.
It was a pretty big rush down. He didn't have a lot of good value cards early on, and the double torch was definitely a good aggressive play to make sure that the rest of the damage was being pushed through. Paradox here with a hand with double red, going to be looking for something else to be playing here, and with a Friendly Wisp, he might have found it. The Friendly Wisp is not a guaranteed double draw here, especially since Valkyrie Enforcer is lurking in Moosh's hand, but it's probably something to play down onto anyways, just to sort of hold the fort. We will see if he decides to hold it until turn 6 and try and get that Sandstorm Titan Friendly Wisp play. Probably not off this Sandstorm Titan, which is almost certainly coming down on turn 4.
Well, the problem with Paradox's hand right now is he doesn't have second time influence.
Yep, it's a rough deal. Certainly means that he's not going to be able to play Heart of the Vault or Sandstorm Titan until such time as he finds them. If he can get them down, though, that's going to help him out quite a bit, and Seed of Impulse, in fact, does do the job. So he gets to play a Friendly Wisp here. He's just daring Moosh to have the silence. If the silence isn't out there, then that's going to be just too much. Obviously, the attack comes in, and I'm guessing Moosh will Valkyrie Enforce this Friendly Wisp, just because that draw 2 is very, very powerful in this list. And there you go. You have 6 damage for Moosh on board, but the Sandstorm Titan is coming out.
So playing Friendly Wisp the turn that Paradox did actually kind of changed the game a little bit, because it what Moosh would have done is play the Valkyrie Enforcer when when they played Seraph, and then had Sandstorm Titan down a turn earlier. But ultimately, no one can attack anyway, so all the threats get out, and it doesn't matter too much.
Yep, we see the Obliterate being fairly likely for the Sandstorm Titan. Paradox can also just play this Dawnwalker and set up very beneficial blocks if he so chooses. Friendly Wisp, of course, answers the Sandstorm Titan as well, since you can block with the Titan and the Wisp to get that 6 damage in. At this point, Paradox is really looking for that extra time. If he finds the extra time, he should be able to swing the game into his favor with the just huge value that he's going to get out of his Heart of the Vaults.
I'm not sold on the Obliterate play because even if he obliterates the Sandstorm Titan, he still can't attack. The double block is too good for Moosh. So yeah, I like developing the Dawnwalker and then, maybe play the Obliterate next turn, attack him with the Dawnwalker when Moosh no longer has favorable blocks, or potentially even be able to play a Heart of the Vault and after you Dawnwalker and kill whatever the Dawn is blocked by the Dawnwalker.
Yeah, agreed. The Obliterate is also better for your Seraph than it is, or for your opponent's Seraph than it is for almost any other unit on the board. Since Seraph is such a big deal against the Praxis midrange matchup, it's just really important to be able to kill that unit if you can.
True.
At this point, Paradox does have a slight problem, and that problem is the Sandstorm Titan. It's sitting pretty. It's going to be attacking in every turn. In the meantime, Paradox still kind of wants to use his Obliterate on something other than the setup that he's currently got. He can Shatterglass Mage here if he wants to draw a card. That might be the right idea, just because it inches him yet another turn closer to getting that special time power. But I'm not sure if he actually wants to do it. He's kind of thinking about just getting a Friendly Wisp down next turn and playing a power instead. It's a risky play, but it might actually work out for him.
Yeah, so I think the idea is that he knows he's drawing a Shatterglass Mage next turn, which means he knows he's activating this Friendly Wisp next turn, which puts him, sure, Shatterglass Mage gets him 1 card deeper, but Friendly Wisp gets him 2 cards deeper, and he's really trying to dig for that final time influence. But he's so low, I don't know if he can afford to take this much time off.
This is a big deal. The Shatterglass Mage would have been a card draw either way, and would have gotten him a little bit closer to the time either way. At this point, he loses 1 card draw off the Shatterglass Mage and gains 1 off of the Friendly Wisp. So he's up 1 card advantage, but that means that he's got a much less. He's got a less of a chance of playing Heart of the Vault early and actually finishing this board the way that he wants to. And with the Parliament down, that's a lot of damage that he really has to deal with.
Yeah, these 2 draws off this Friendly Wisp are going to be super pivotal. And no time influence. Wow. Displacer, though, all right. Not a bad draw. He's got reasonable double blocks here. He's not quite dead, and he can remove something with Obliterate next turn. But Seraph gets to activate, and what do we roll? An 8/8, a vanilla 8/8.
Yeah, not too bad. That's definitely above Obliterate range. 7/7s and 8/8s are traditionally pretty good against the Praxis mid-range lists. Cards like Reality Warden, they just tend to do pretty well in those situations. Paradox going for even blocks, taking some health damage, but making sure that the Owl dies so that there aren't that many flying threats against him. With a Sandstorm Titan of his own, he's capable of holding the board for a little bit, but that 8/8 is just too much. He's only got 7 power, so I don't know that he has a good out here. Anything that he plays is just going to delay the board, and that's not going to be good enough.
Yeah, he needs to be able to play 2 cards this turn, and he can only play 1.
The Vaults lying unplayed in Paradox's hand. This is the real risk of the Heart of the Vault card. It's one of the things that actually is sort of its weakness. You really need that influence for it, and if you can't make that happen, then it's going to cost you in the game. It certainly has that basically decreased reliability as a result. It's usually well worth it, but in this case, it ends up knocking Paradox down, and we're going to see probably this is not going to go well for him.
Yeah, I mean, Moosh can just attack him with both of these units. Paradox goes to 2, and then play the 8/8, which is, certainly not a Seraph activation, but it's fine.
Found a Heart of the Vault on top. If he plays the Heart of the Vault and gets another blocker, I think there's maybe a chance to get out of that. It'd be like something like Heart of the Vault into...
It would have to be Friendly Wisp.
Heart of the Vault into Torch would have done it.
Oh, true.
Chooses to forfeit, and that will be the game.
Yeah, it was low percentage, but worth going for. Maybe he just kind of wasn't sure what cards were left in his deck. Either way, though, I think he was still dead in like 2 turns.
It's a pretty tricky situation. So we're going to see a lot of different options against Big Combre. This deck can run in Xenon Initiations and additional killer units, which are good answers to the Seraph, which, as we saw, is definitely an important card to be removing. If you can get rid of the Seraph with cards like Predatory Carnosaur or Xenon Initiation, that's going to be very well to your benefit. The main risk there, of course, is if you use Xenon Initiation, something like a Dawnwalker, and it gets silenced, then that's a 2-for-1 instead of a 1-for-1, and that can be really, really risky for you. But we do see a lot of different options. Obliterate and Heart of the Vault are potential cards that can come in, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting setup.
I think he has the full 4 Obliterates and Heart of the Vaults in the main deck. What cards do you feel you like in Paradox's sideboard there? Because he's got the 1 Flame Blast, which I really like. He's got the Diogo, which is good in the late game, but I wonder how aggressive does he want to get, or does he want to try and outvalue in the late game with Obelisks, Diogo, and maybe even Groundbreakers to just sort of seal that up?
I really like the Xenon Obelisks in particular. Like, making your stuff bigger is just really relevant against these types of decks, and the Combre deck is not running 4 Shatterglass Mages, unlike the Praxis matchup. So as a result, it's going to make your stuff bigger. It's going to help out quite a bit, and it looks like those are coming in against the big Combre list. In the meantime, the Combre side is once again going for Vodafone Temple Speaker, trying to push out that sort of like extra value in the late game, and ditching the stand together. So just making itself less obliterate proof, but more capable of just getting a lot of good offense in.
Moosh also not bringing in Awakened students, which I'm not sure I entirely agree with, because it's an early play that sometimes needs to be obliterated, which means that some of your other relevant units can survive, and it's just something you can play early that ends up blocking all these big threats that Praxis plays, and you just want to get to the late game. So I don't know. I definitely think there's a case for Awakened Student, but he does still have harsh rules in the deck, so that's definitely a clashing game plan.
Yeah, you can certainly end up in a bad board situation where you need to harsh rule. If the plan is to go for the heavier control and just outvalue Paradox, then the Awakened Students are certainly not necessarily the card that you're looking for, but they are very strong against the early game. So if you're expecting a lot of like early torches, a lot of early aggression, then that's something that you really have to go for. It looks like both players have slanted very heavily towards their late game. And with Paradox getting a card draw off of Amber Acolyte, going to be moving up towards 4 pretty quickly and actually setting up a little bit of value with Xenon Obelisk.
Yeah, and I like, from Moosh's perspective, I definitely would have kept that hand. Has Desert Marshal on 2 as an answer, Valkyrie Enforcer on 3 as an answer, and a harsh rule. But it's not very proactive. Being able to play power every turn is really nice, and being able to, draw, play anything you draw is nice. But if Paradox is doing exactly what he's doing, which is just setting up things, setting up his draws with Temple Scribes and playing out Obelisks, Moosh doesn't really have a lot of interaction with that, and maybe Obelisk and Heart of the Vaults will just be too much value through a harsh rule.
Yeah, Paradox setting down Temple Scribe here, trying to draw into his 5th power. If he does fix for that, he'll be able to cast cards like Obliterate and Flame Blast, and also, like, combined with the Xenon Obelisk, like, really take control of the board. Moosh, in the meantime, has nothing to take control of the board. All of his cards are kind of bad against the small units, like the Temple Scribe and the Amber Acolyte. Voice of the Speaker is just not a very good blocker, especially after the Obelisk comes down. Moosh can Voice of the Speaker and then Seek Power to get a decent amount of extra power, but as a result, he sacrifices the ability to Desert Marshal, so he's going to actually just hold on to that and get that voice torched.
No, he would have still been able to Desert Marshal. I'm not sure why he didn't Seek Power.
Yeah, it's a, but it looks like regardless, he's going to hit 6 or 7, so should be okay on that front.
Yeah. But Paradox stuck on 4. So this is Moosh's ticket to get back into the game. And there we go. He starts drawing proactive threats in Marshall Ironthorn.
Yep, Martial Ironthorn's a very big deal here, and with Paradox still sitting on a bunch of 6-drops, it's going to be a little bit rough. The Ironthorn will get obliterated. Basically, the thing that's really helping Paradox out here is the Xenon Obelisk. His Temple Scribe and Amber Acolyte have become threats that are actually dangerous enough that they might have to be harsh ruled, because he's going to be attacking for 5 every turn. If the Ironthorn comes down, that's just going to get obliterated. The next card that comes down is also going to get Flame Blasted, and that's just 5 damage pushing every turn out of Paradox. So with the Valkyrie Enforcer, Moosh can sort of stem this bleeding a little bit, but the torch is drawn off the top of the deck, and Paradox still has a very proactive board.
Yeah, so this is the power of Xenon Obelisk versus these harsh rule decks. Not only does it make your board more threatening and more likely to get harsh ruled, but even after harsh rule comes down, you still have the Obelisk. But here comes Martial Ironthorn to clean stuff up. Also, I just realized why I think Moosh is not playing the Seek power. I think he's trying to use it as a draw spell with Vodacon.
Yeah, if you can get the combo off, that certainly can help. It's not always going to be amazing, but he does have 3 Vodacons in the deck, so if he can find it, that is a win con, as the case may be. So we've got the Obliterates. We've got the Obliterates finally available for Paradox. That means that Martial Ironthorn is going to go down, and Moosh's temporary reprieve from the attacking Amber Acolytes is put on hold, and now we have 5 damage coming in once again.
So Paradox thought for a moment there about playing the Reinhardt because it would be a 6/6 and be able to attack through Ironthorn. Also potentially, Obliterate just wants to go face because of how low Moosh is. But he decides against it, and I think that's the correct play just because he's already got a Flame Blast. He's got Heart of the Vaults, which can even do 2 damage each to face. And he can play the threats after. It'll be fine.
Drawing nothing but power here, completely flooded, looking for better answers. Doesn't really need to play the power if he doesn't want to, but can certainly hold on to it or play it, and goes for the Seat here, which indicates that he has another power in hand. Paradox is only pressuring with this Temple Scribe. As soon as he plays anything, I think that Moosh is going to be forced to harsh rule. But the Reinhardt is certainly the card that Moosh is hoping to see, because that at least makes his harsh rule somewhat valuable.
Yeah, and this is the classic screw versus flood, basically. If Paradox draws a Fire Sigil, I think this game is just absolutely his. Just play out the Heart of the Vaults, which both need answers, but replace themselves in Paradox's hand, and then Moosh is just basically dead to this Flame Blast.
Yeah, Moose chooses to harsh rule and play a power. Next turn,
Wow.
if he picks up a power, he gets 3 owls, but Heart of the Vault is now playable. That's a little bit of extra card draw and another power for Paradox.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. There's the Fire Sigil, like we said, and here comes double Heart of the Vault into Flame Blast, and he's gonna need like a Protect doesn't even save him because he's got to remove the Heart of the Vaults as well.
Yep, he's in a lot of trouble. He's got the Vanquish for the Heart of the Vaults, but the second Heart of the Vault is going to deal 2 damage to him, and that'll put him at 7, which is lethal after the Flame Blast on the next turn.
Okay, now with the 3 owls in play, which obviously were coming. I don't know why I forgot about that. He is alive with a Protect, but the Carnosaurs still come down, kill a bunch of the owls, and I don't know. I just don't see it happening for Moosh other than drawing, more Great Parliaments just off the top, some kind of owl insanity.
Yep. Moosh passes turn. The Flame Blast comes out. The Protect is not there, and that is the game. So Paradox takes that one.
Yeah. So we're 2-1, right? Is that correct?
Sounds correct to me. So we are going to be moving into the match point for the Praxis deck, and with any potential luck, might be able to seal it up. But we could see a decent amount of back and forth. We're going to really have to see exactly what ends up happening.
Yeah, this matchup could definitely go 2-2 and go all the way, all 5 matches. But as we just saw, the Praxis deck doesn't have too much trouble sealing up a game if Calimdir gives it a window.
Yep, can be a pretty good setup. Certainly, we are seeing yet another challenge coming out, and with that, we are going to be going into the next round. There's 4 Obliterates, 4 Heart of the Vaults. Yeah, it looks like the Obelisks are going down to 2. Mild sideboarding from the... Oh, never mind. Sorry, that's the wrong stream. So yeah, we're just going to be going into the next game, and we'll see exactly who ends up with the list.
Yeah, it looks like Moosh is rethinking their sideboard a little bit. I think Paradox changed one or two cards. Moosh still thinking about it, but they should be getting into the game shortly. How did you feel about the harsh rules?
The harsh rules were not valuable against the obelisk, obviously. I think that just by virtue of the big praxis being really, really power sunk, Moosh did not have optimal plays. Like, he was looking for the Heart of the Vaults a lot earlier. He was looking for all of the value plays so that he could harsh rule and really get the everything going on. But what happened instead was just a Temple Scribe and an Amber Acolyte, two things that are just way too small to harsh rule, were pressuring so much damage that he eventually was going to lose if he didn't do something about them.
Yeah, I think the harsh rules are kind of a necessary evil on Moosh's side because the Praxis deck is designed to kind of beat harsh rule decks with, because of Heart of the Vault and Dawnwalker and just warp Shatterglass mages. It's really easy for them to sort of regroup, reform after a harsh rule. But I mean, it's also very easy for them to just play a bunch of Sandstorm Titans, and you've had better have an answer. So I think it's a necessary evil.
Yep, Paradox looking at the Dawnwalker versus Amber Acolyte thread here. If he plays the Amber Acolyte, he gets to play Sandstorm Titan early, which is very important. The person who plays this first Sandstorm Titan often has an advantage on board, and, well, I mean, does have an advantage on board, and that means that, like, the reactionary Sandstorm Titan can get answered by threats, and the first Sandstorm Titan then tends to get to push in for damage. So a player who goes first often gets a lot of advantage by just playing Titan on curve. Paradox knows this, chooses wisely to play Amber Acolyte to secure that Sandstorm Titan first.
Yeah, and Moosh, going second, not having an initiate, so basically being 2 turns behind as far as tempo, and kind of forced to play out more stuff into their own harsh rule, which is pretty rough.
This might end up being a very quick 3-1 for Paradox, as Paradox has just drawn the remaining power necessary to play Heart of the Vault out. With a hand full of threats and a Heart of the Vault promising even more threats, Moosh is going to have to harsh rule to really secure this board. The one advantage that Moosh has is that harsh rule in hand. It's pretty likely to come out after the Heart of the Vault next turn. With Sandstorm Titan holding down the fort, Moosh is actually capable of holding for at least a turn or two more before the board gets out of control.
Yeah, with Paradox choosing to play that Shatterglass Mage over the Dawnwalker, I'm not sold on his chances here because he still has to play another card into this harsh rule, like play the Carnosaur maybe, kill the Sandstorm Titan and attack, and then harsh rule is going to clean up a lot. I mean, sure, Paradox is still going to... Oh, and he's playing the Heart of the Vault now, maybe. Well, we'll find out at the end of this turn, but it'd be very easy for Paradox to overextend into this harsh rule.
Yep, it's pretty likely even. I think with Heart of the Vault, even overextension is not actually a bad idea. Like, you certainly want to be aggressive with this deck and just force them to have every harsh rule that they have. If Paradox can get through the first one, he can build a board that's going to be better than a single owl on Moosh's side. So this attack does look pretty good in terms of overall damage, even if the harsh rule that comes after is going to be truly devastating.
Yeah, and even though he won't be able to play Heart of the Vault next turn because the Initiative Sands will die to the harsh rule, he will just play Amber Acolyte and Dawnwalker and then play Heart of the Vault next turn.
Yep, that's a pretty good way to build up the board, and he can always draw a power this turn, which would certainly help out as well. Moosh, in the meantime, looking for Vodakhan. If he can find Vodakhan, that's his ticket out of this game. Actually setting that up and getting the whole Voda combo would really secure the win for him here. But it's not as reliable as Heart. Yep. All right, draws another Amber Acolyte, so that's a little bit of extra power. The Amber Acolyte's draw is unfortunately pretty irrelevant for this game, beyond the fact that it's going to put Paradox up to 8, meaning that an Obelisk draw will be extremely good for him. So they do have a chance to become relevant units, and with Valkyrie Enforcer doing not much more than silencing Heart of the Vault, this is going to get a little bit rough.
Yeah, I think had Paradox... Well, actually, that's a pretty good double block for Moosh. I mean, he loses Seraph, but he only loses Seraph. He still gets to keep a 3/3. But yeah, I think had Paradox played that Dawnwalker instead of that Shatterglass Mage, I mean, can you imagine? He'd still have Shatterglass Mage in hand, and Dawnwalker would be out on the board.
Yep, it would be a pretty good deal for him there. He's actually choosing to play the Friendly Wisp here. With the Valkyrie Enforcer out, it seems fairly likely that the Friendly Wisp is going to live, But at the same time, like anything that he draws, he's probably going to be able to play with Friendly Wisp, with the exception of Heart of the Vault.
Wow, and look at Moosh's hand. He wants 8th power so bad here.
Yeah, he can play Mystic Ascendant down and hope that Paradox doesn't have Obelisk. That gives him a blocker in a situation where he wouldn't otherwise have a blocker. In the meantime, Paradox needs to find some sort of 6-drop, and if he can, he's got a very good chance of pushing this game across. But neither side has the right gas, and so they're both just kind of in a very awkward position where they're trying to establish that board advantage, but they don't quite have the right way to do it. If they can't get it going, it's going to be a little bit tough, but I think it should favor Moosh as far as the awkwardness goes.
Yeah, I think as the game goes on, Moosh has slightly better draws. And since both players are trying to draw cards here, there's cards they're missing. I think it does favor Moosh. You're correct.
See Dawnwalker actually going ignored. Moosh has established an Owl as a potential attacker and or blocker, enough at least to prevent additional damage from coming across, but with Mystic Ascendant coming down and a Diplomatic Seal on top of that, what he now has to do is get that unit above 6 before the Obliterate comes out.
Yeah, and it looks like it's gonna be pretty easy considering Paradox just drew a 10th power, and even exposes that to Moosh by playing the seat first.
Yeah, this is one of the strengths of the Combre decks. They tend to do very well in board stall situations just because their power drops count as cards. Like they're extremely effective in floods, and that's one of the big strengths of the Combre deck in general, and something that definitely Moosh is going to be pretty happy about. Moosh can now choose to attack with his 4/4 and his 3/3. He's kind of considering leaving the 4/4 back as a blocker for Dawnwalker. But with the Valkyrie Enforcer silencing that on board, Paradox is now in significant trouble.
Yeah, wow. If Paradox, I mean, obviously Moosh knows the last card in hand is another power, but if Paradox had a Flame Blast, wow, holy cow! So that
is a scary card.
Yeah, two off lethal, but I think he's just dead. I think had he not blocked, he would have had lethal, correct?
If Paradox attacks for 4 here, or attacks with everything here, there's some potential block that he can, or attack that he can make here that will threaten Heart of the Vault. Oh, okay, but he's not going to try the bluff. He's just going to sit back with his blockers and hope for an Obliterate. That's also a very solid plan.
Yeah, I think this is the safest plan at this point.
Yeah, this is the safest route to victory. If he draws the Obliterate off the top, he wins. Moosh still can pick up like a Combre healer off of his draw, but he doesn't find it. So we now have a 12/12 swinging in, another 5/5. Paradox should almost like not be blocking here, but it doesn't quite work that way. He can choose to block the 4/4 if he wants to, but obviously there's a Parliament is a backup for blocking. So whatever he ends up doing is going to have to be next turn Obliterate or loss. So it's Heart of the Cards at this point.
Yeah, hopefully it's Heart of the Vault into some other damage spell. That'd be some real Heart of the Cards right there.
Yeah, so we've got Great Parliament. There we go. Sigil
and
for
it's
Paradox.
a time sigil.
That's game, and now it is 2-2, I believe. So we should be going into one last game.
And I
very
think,
close match.
The other semifinal is over. So we have Swan on the big Praxis deck advancing over Kamado, who we didn't get to see on camera, but they're playing a super interesting Fire Justice Shadow list that I've talked about as being like a Praxis Slayer type list. It's a list that I've seen them play in a couple events, and it's just full of maidens and stewards in an attempt to sort of beat these Dawnwalker based decks, but ultimately goes down to the heavier like higher costed, higher curve type Praxis.
The Praxis killer. Yeah, it looks like we are. So yeah, it looks like we are. I guess we're rooting on the Combre deck, since that's certainly going to create a bit more of a diverse matchup in the finals. But Praxis versus Praxis is always a fun time, so I'm pretty okay with either side winning.
You don't want to see Praxis versus Praxis in the finals after Praxis won the last 2 ETSs? What's wrong with you?
Well, I think we'll have a good idea of who's going to win the next ETS. So yeah, we've got Initiative of the Sands here, and some torches in the hand. Paradox has pretty much the perfect early hand. I think he feels pretty good about this, but if he doesn't draw into his 5 or 6s, it's going to be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, this hand I feel like is really favored for Moosh between the two hands. Paradox just has nothing relevant for a million turns,
Yeah.
and Moosh just has Harsh Rule, is going to gain some health, and has 2 answers to Dawnwalker. So I
Yeah,
just
he
don't
gets
see.
to Silence Initiate, which slows the board down a little bit. And while that's pretty likely to get torched, that's still a pretty good deal for him.
I don't even think he needs to Silence Initiate. I think he's got the Harsh Rule. He doesn't care about threats being accelerated out, so he's going to play the healer.
Yep, Combray Healer. He's betting on the Sandstorm Titan not being in hand, and indeed it wasn't. So now Moosh gets to play his own Sandstorm Titan and start pushing the board, or he gets to play a Valkyrie Enforcer and like actually start shutting things off and making it a little harder for Paradox to get to his Sandstorm Titan. Yeah, Initiative Sands is often a blank card in this deck just because the main job that it does is accelerating you into Sandstorm Titan. And if you don't have Sandstorm Titan, it's not going to accelerate you into Heart of the Vault. So there's some risk here, and it's not being a particularly high payoff for Paradox.
Yeah, when your opponent's at 27, the tempo play of Practice Displacer isn't as relevant at all.
Yep, like the Sandstorm Titan goes back in hand, and Moosh just plays it again if he wants to, or he can Harsh Rule, which seems like a pretty unnecessary board change at this point. He's looking pretty solid here. The does a perfectly fine job of holding down the fort, and Paradox sitting on Obliterate and Double Torch. I think he actually may choose to Double Torch here after taking a look at the replay to see exactly what happened there.
He might have been checking. Oh man.
Oh my.
He might have been checking for like a protect or something, some pause somewhere, or how much power Moosh had played.
Double Torch. Did something happen with his hand where it?
He didn't. He only had 1 power available.
He only had 1 power available. Okay. Yeah. So a bit of a rough play there. I looked back at the replays and then lost track of how much power he had left. So that mistake could really cost him in this game. Paradox is going to, and he's got a torch up for 1 Valkyrie Enforcer, but he's down 1 card as a result of that mistake, and he's not picking up Heart of the Vault anytime soon.
Yeah, that mistake seemed pretty bad, but I just feel like Paradox is so far behind in this matchup that it might not matter. I mean, he can't cast. He's still only on 1 Fire Influence. Zenith Initiation just needs cards that Paradox does not have and cannot cast.
In a lot of trouble. Both of his initiates have been silenced, so he's not going to have 6 power. The Fire Influence would really help here because he could obliterate that Sandstorm Titan. And there it is. Amber Acolyte picks it up, which will allow him to perform an obliterate on the next turn after chump blocking the Sandstorm Titan for 1 more go.
Yeah, so at this point, Paradox coming back a little bit into the game. The misplay is now starting to hurt.
Yeah, it's definitely going to hurt him overall. Like with the Valkyrie's dead, then he's in a lot better shape. He actually drew a fire, and Heart of the Vault will really help him here. He's going to get 2 damage out just into the face, and a cheap Sandstorm Titan gives him a decent amount of threats on board. Moosh has double Vanquish in hand, which may be enough to push for lethal. At this point, Paradox, however, can play Sandstorm Titan into Obliterate, and that's really going to help him out in this situation.
Yeah, that's a ton of tempo. Also, look at that Shatterglass Mage off the top. He can play both.
There's potential to play both of them if he wants to. He can also go for Zenith Initiation, which is a good way to kill that Sandstorm Titan without using your Obliterate, leaving you with a decent amount of burn in hand. I think Paradox feels pretty happy about that, and he's actually in a strong position from this point onwards.
Yeah, now this is actually looking a lot better for Paradox, and that makes me really feel bad about that misplay because it definitely is going to have an impact on the game.
To 8, he's going to be in a pretty tough situation. We have Combray Healer coming out again, so Paradox chose not to block with the Dawnwalker this turn. He's going to play Shatterglass Mage, and that will allow him to block Combray Healer were it not for, well, there isn't another Vanquish, so it's Harsh Rule or Moosh can just sit tight and
but yeah, Harsh Rule and
stay
double
defensive.
Owl Parliament is pretty powerful from Mush's side, though.
Yeah, double owls is definitely a big deal. At this point, Paradox has taken so much damage from his own misplay that the Obliterate is going to be enough to help him stabilize, but he's actually going to be forced to use the Flame Blast on the owl as well. And at that point, Moosh can play down Sandstorm Titan and really start pushing in.
I don't think he even plays Sandstorm Titan because he has the Owl for lethal.
Yep, so Flame Blast comes in, and that gets rid of the owl. Paradox now banking on another Heart of the Vault to help him out, or some sort of miracle if he can find it. At this point, the double block for the Sandstorm Titan is not available. Both Combre healers persist on board, so he has to just chump block, and that will kill one Combre healer, but he will be down a Dawnwalker and be dead next turn on board.
Yep, and that Harsh Rule never even needed to get played, and the Protect just the feels bad.
Yep, the Obliterate would have saved him, but the Protect is there, so Paradox loses that round, and I think, unfortunately, he will be knocked out of the game. So yeah, it's going to be Combre versus Praxis in the finals. I think that was a pretty solid matchup. It's quite possible that Paradox's misplay led him to end up in 3rd or 4th place, but all the same, that was a really solid amount of play from both players, and like very, very good. Just a very strong showing from both decks.
Yeah, 2 key misplays in the last 2 games, I think, lost Paradox those games. But, you know, he still is, I believe, qualified for the Invitational on points, and he's been to a couple Invitationals already, so he's got a few series points, so he might even still make it to Worlds. So his run's not over, it just is for today. But we get to see now in the next round, in the finals, Swan versus Moosh with Praxis High End, as Swan calls it, versus Big Combre. I believe we have a message for you. Yeah. Oh, no. We'll cover that later. All right. So that's it. And we're going to go to the finals right after this break.
Then.